Hey everyone, this is Jake Krug and welcome back to Blind Faith Week 30. This week I'd like to talk about more evidence that I learned in biology that proves to me that God exists. There's a list of 7 items that I have. I don't think it's necessary to read them off, but there's a list of 7 items that are necessary for the first cell, so the first unit of life to have. And it's a mixture of like a boundary and stuff like that. That's just like the question is how did this form if there's not a creator like God? They believe that it was formed in some sort of primeval soup kind of thing, that these things just came together, a cell boundary kind of formed and stuff, which I don't see how this all randomly came together, because there's 7 things, like I said, 7 things that are necessary for a cell, 7 different components that had to come together for the first cell. And some of the components are like a group of components, like for example RNA is a chain of information that would have had to come together by itself, just randomly been like, oh yeah, I'm going to come together without conscious thought or whatever. And I just don't think this makes sense. The more I go to biology and more I realize that it proves that God exists. It always seems like the biology's trying to prove that God doesn't exist, which scientists would tell you that God doesn't exist, and some of them anyway. And the teaching, they tried to teach that God didn't exist, it all came together by itself. But the more information you learn, the more and more you realize that it could not have been just by accident. It could not have just came together randomly. The other idea was that its life came from some space rock, some meteorite that hit Earth, but life would have still had to start somewhere. So then you have that same issue you come back to: what made these random components come together in the first unit of life, and what made cells come together to make like human beings and stuff, because our bodies work together seamlessly. Each part has its own job, each organ has its own job, each tissue type has its own job, and each cell has its own job and own type and everything. So in this case, it cannot live without one another. But if it's survival of the fittest, how is each organ relying on other organs, each cell relying on other cells? Survival of the fittest. Wouldn't self-reliance be the best choice? Because the strongest cells would rather live alone and take care of themselves only, and then the weaker cells would rather not burn themselves with other weaker cells that might not survive either. The only plausible explanation is that God created us. God created cells, God created tissues, God created the organs, the organ systems, and the individual. God had this all planned out. God made us perfect, how God wants us to be made. God's plan is perfect, because God doesn't make mistakes. If you look at the idea of us accidentally appearing here, there are just too many things that had to go on right, because not only would the cells and all that had to come together just right in this special conditions that are impossible to repeat, but we'd also have to have the sun be just the right distance from the earth, which it is, and the moon be just the right distance from the earth. And you look at human history, we've not been hit by any major asteroids or meteorites or comets or any of that nature. And I believe it's because God is protecting the earth. God created the earth. God wants to keep us safe. You look at other places, it's not common, but it's not rare for a large asteroid to once in a while strike it. And the earth has not been struck by a large asteroid in a long time. the question that scientists always ask is when the next one will be. I believe the next one won't happen, and if it happens, it's because God already has brought us to a new place, a paradise place, or God, it won't wipe out civilization completely, because God doesn't want all of us to die. Another thing that proves me that Bible's right and God exists is you look at all the ceremonies and stuff in the Bible it talks about. All the disease, like ways of preventing the disease. Like, for example, if someone touched feces, you had to isolate yourself for, I believe it was 7 days. And this 7 days is about the incubation time that most diseases would take to incubate before showing symptoms. So these 7 days would show if you would be sick or not. And these ancient humans, back when God told us that, shouldn't have understood disease well enough to be like, oh yeah, if you touch this, you need to be isolated for 7 days. If this happens, you need to be isolated for 7 days. God was doing it to protect us and keep us healthy, because he didn't want his believers to get wiped out by some disease or whatever. So he wanted to teach us how to be healthy and how to be safe. And this information is kind of, modern medicine's kind of showing us the truth of it now, and it's matching up really nicely with the Bible. It agrees with the Bible. But the ancient humans, if they just invented the Bible and just ran it without any proof and without God coming to them, they would have had no clue about most of this information. Most of it just seemed like silly ideas that, why would you isolate someone for 7 days for touching something that's not clean? Unless if you think about the disease aspect. So today I've just kind of listed some of the major things that stand out to me. I have a tendency to notice more things, especially throughout biology and back to the Bible and stuff, that there's more things that I'm like, well, science is trying to prove to me that God doesn't exist. It's not doing a very good job, because the more I look at it, the more I see evidence of God and everything that has to do with science and all the scientific parts. Because there's no way it could have been created by accident. There's no way that we just appeared, because no one's been able to repeat this. No one will be able to repeat this, because life is special. Life was created by God. God has a purpose, and God doesn't make mistakes. So life was made purposely on Earth, and in the exact right conditions, in the exact right time period, and exact right everything for life to work out. All the chemicals around us are key. You look at parts of chemistry match into it, parts of biology. Like, there's certain things that if they didn't occur in chemistry, we wouldn't be able to live, we would die. Certain chemical reactions and stuff. And there's certain biological ways our bodies work that if our bodies didn't work that way, we would not be able to survive either. And you cannot evolutionize to that point if your body's not able to survive before that point. So even if you look for one more second at the idea of we just randomly appeared here and evolutionized to where we are today, how did we randomly start producing, like, insulin, for example? Because insulin is a key component for keeping blood sugar at the correct levels. Or how do we grow thyroid glands and stuff like that? Like, there's so many enzymes and so many parts of our endocrine system that are key to our survival. And without these, then we would not be able to survive. And in creation, if we were just randomly became humans, there'd probably be most of them, probably all of them, that had been born without this originally. All creatures have been born without this. So how did we randomly switch to having this without dying, because it's a necessary part now? This is Jake Kruger. This is Blind Faith Week 30. Remember, I've got that email account, jakekruger.blindfaith@gmail.com. Send me any emails of any comments. Also comment on the video about what you think, any other ideas or any other things that you come up with that prove that God exists. I would be interested to learn about and know. I'm trying to kind of come up with a list of reasons, and the more I look at it, the more I realize that there's no way that it was by accident. I mean, I already believed in God, so I already knew there's no way. But the more you look at it, the more you realize that there had been not just one accident, it had been millions of accidents that had all happened at the exact right time, and it's not possible. So please leave your comments of your lists of things that prove to you that God exists, whether it's stuff you see in your daily basis, stuff you see in science, or stuff that you just like feel and stuff, just any feelings, anything. Please share them, and I'd be interested to hear about them. Maybe next time I can talk about more information, because I feel like this is something that I can fill several videos about. Thanks for watching. See y'all next week.